incredibly pleased that the numbers have come out, and I'm just incredibly impressed with all the people that have just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And there are lots of organisations and people who are trying really hard to make sure that the public have the knowledge about this, because, you know, there are some prices to be paid for these austerity cuts, and it's important that we know what those prices are. And they are individual people who have died. So I think it's good in a society, a democracy, in a sort of open society, that that sort of thing comes out, and at least it's then in the open. And I'm not surprised they've had to force the DWP to publish it, because in their hearts they'll know they're killing people. They'll know that, but they don't want to have to admit it publicly. So, you know, I'm very pleased, but it's all a bit late, really. Well, Mark really, from when he was tiny, was quite a troubled little character. Very shy, very sensitive, found it quite hard to concentrate, but had some talents, like he was brilliant at drawing, loved animals, very sort of creative, imaginative person. But essentially, as he got older, it became clear that his problems were, you know, really having quite an impact on his ability to cope with normal life. And it wasn't at all clear exactly what he had wrong with him, because these are the days when autism wasn't so well known and OCD wasn't so well known, and we struggled to get a diagnosis for him, really. He was just regarded as a slightly sort of troubled child, really. And then as he got older, he basically was unable to work. Every time he took a job, he lost it within days due to not anything. He was trying to lose his jobs, but he just couldn't seem to take on board information, instructions. You know, he used to flood kitchens if he was a kitchen porter. He used to break cheque-making machines if he was in charge of those. He just had a litany of things where things just went a bit wrong. And it turned out, when we got a diagnosis for him later in his life, that he'd sort of had a mixture of OCD and also Asperger's, and also eventually he developed all sorts of phobias and addictions, which he did try to conquer, but ultimately they conquered him. He had the standard ESA, which I think is £70 or something a week, but obviously you pay for things from that. He also was in receipt of housing benefit, which went towards paying for the house that we'd arranged with the housing association. So those were the two things he got, plus he got the DLA, which was the £40. So actually, you know, that's a decent amount of money for someone to live off, and he was living in a decent but frugal way. He wasn't having a great time, he wasn't partying, he was just eating lettuce and trotting around on his bicycle. He tried to help out people, do a little bit of gardening, but unfortunately wasn't ever really able to do a proper job. But then what happened was that when Atos caught up with him on February of, I think it's 13, I can't remember my years now, it all fell apart basically, and he became much more ill, much more panicked, much more phobic, lost all his money, didn't really understand what had happened, and then gradually, all the panicking, he tried to reach out and ask for help, but then he didn't really want it, and the job centre didn't help him. As he got more and more panicked and more phobic, he was less and less able to eat, not helped by the fact that he didn't have any money, although we'd managed to get him some cash towards the end, but by that time he was on BMI 12 or something, and when you have a BMI of 12, you're not exactly popping down the shops, are you, to buy things? So I'm not pretending for a minute that it was totally the money that caused him to die like that. It was a combination of his food phobia with the loss of money, but it's to do with the decision that caused his phobia to essentially accelerate and drop off. And that's what the doctor said. He said something pushed him incredibly hard around the springtime and caused all his anxieties, all his phobias, all his issues to just snowball and end up in that place, basically. I think my brother died because the world and the society that we're moving towards can't really have people like Mark in it anymore. And I knew when the coalition government came in with the austerity packages that someone like him would be extremely vulnerable, and that will be happening up and down the country to many disabled people, many mentally ill people, and it's a real shame. So I just think there's no longer a space for people like him to live and, you know, have their little lives. And I'm a full taxpayer, have been for years. I'm happy to pay my taxes to allow people, vulnerable people, to live alongside me, basically. And I know he was my brother, but I'm also happy now to pay my taxes for other people to live like that. And obviously the more people that can go to work, that's brilliant, it's good for them. People like Mark, just so vulnerable, unable to work, let's look after them. But I think that's not possible anymore.